The days are long, but the decades are short. A few days ago, I posted a video called Budgeting Your Life, and it was a sort of like a lifestyle video of me going around London getting a shower curtain and talking about how you have to budget your life. You have to figure out certain objectives in your life. Now, in this video, I'm going to actually show that. How you should be planning out your life on a spreadsheet. Like having specific objectives and things that you want to do and accomplish by the time your life ends. Because, see, you might not realize it, but your life will end. I mean, you're 20-something right now watching me. You have no idea how quickly 50 will sneak up on you. I'm 50, I'm 49. I remember it like yesterday that I was 18. The decades, 10, 20, 30 years, they get behind you so fast. So you want to be thinking now what you want to accomplish in your life. You want to be putting yourself goalposts where you want to be at certain times in your life, where you want to be at 40, at 50, at 70, at 80. Do you want to be a 70-year-old man greeting people at the Walmart because you're completely broke and that's the best job that you could find? Do you want to be an 80-year-old man dying alone with no one in his life, no friends, no family? You want to be thinking about those endpoints now while you can, now that you have the luxury of time, because you're going to realize something key. As the years pass, your options narrow. Your life is really like a funnel. And as you age, that funnel gets narrower and narrower. And decisions you made in the past make it impossible to get out of the groove that you're currently in. And make it impossible to avoid some destiny that, maybe it's a destiny that you never thought possible. Maybe it's a destiny that you never hoped to have. Well, it was because of decisions you made in your 20s and your 30s. So you have to be thinking about those decisions now, so that when you hit 70, when you hit 80, you're where you want to be. You want to be dictating your circumstances. You don't want destiny or life to just show you up and tell you this is your life. You want to be dictating the pace of your life and the direction of your life. Now, this is going to help you to do that. So let's get started. See, on this vertical column, I put when I'm 20, then the decade after, when I'm 30, then the decade after, when I'm 40, then the decade after, and when I'm 50, when I'm 60, 70, and 80. And I put then the decade after 80. You hit 80, you're going to be lucky if there's anything left over, but let's assume for the sake of argument. Now, on the horizontal here, I have different aspects. Now, I colored them rainbow colored, very gay, yes, I know, but for a simple reason, just to distinguish it, so that you will know what we're talking about when we go through the different ages and the different areas of your life. Now, as you can see, there's your life, the overall, the overarching aspect of your life. Your fitness, your assets, I'm talking about financial assets. Your finances, I'm talking really income. Your career, your family life, your relationships, and finally here, your friends. Now, these columns that I've assigned here, they are what works for me and might help you. You change them as you see fit. All right? Now, it's always been helpful to me to be thinking of where I am going to be by a certain birthday. Now, I happen to have been born on February 29th, 1968. Because of that, my birthday, my real birthday as it were, comes once every 4 years. The next time I get it is going to be the year 2020. I'm going to be 52 years old, and I already have certain objectives for that date. Now, for the purposes of this exercise, let's take it 10 years at a time. All right? Now, let's talk first about your life. Your life, if you think about it, when you're 20 and that decade, when you're 20, you're just young and stupid, and the decade following that, you're finding your place in the world. Whereas when you're 30, you've completed your apprenticeship all right? Because you're going to realize that in a lot of areas of your life, your 20s are the decade where you figure things out, where you're an apprentice. You're understanding your job, you're understanding relationships, you're understanding a whole different load of stuff during your 20s, things that you can only understand by way of experience. But at the same time, you're experiencing them in your 20s in such a way that any mistake you make is not going to be end of the world mistake. Hopefully won't be end of the world mistake. Now, when you're 40, all right, that's the peak of your life. And that peak continues into the decade of your 50s. Between 40 and 59, that is really the peak of your life in terms of your profession, in terms of your relationships, in terms of your life experience. You're at a point where your body can still deliver, your mind is sharp, but your emotions are more in control. You have a firmer grip on your life. It's really the best time of your life, really. And you should enjoy it. Now, you hit 60, and that's when the decline starts. And that decline only accelerates once you hit 70. There's more decline, and quite frankly, when you get to 80, that's essentially the end. Anything after 80, that's just, it's over. It's over. Well, it's over a lot earlier than that, as a matter of fact, but we're going to get to that right away. Now, the first thing that you should be thinking about, all right, insofar as your life, is how you are going to make it when you hit 60, 70, 80, in terms of how you are going to survive. Now, the smart thing is you want to be having income-producing assets by the time you're 80. Income-producing assets that will help you survive. Because by the time you're 80, any kind of 401k, any kind of social security, any of that shit, forget about that. You cannot depend on that. You have to be thinking about your own retirement now while you can. You have to be thinking, 50 years into the future and saying, this is where I want to be financially speaking. Now, when I'm 70, this is what I want to have. I want to own my own home outright. I want to have cash savings equals to 30 years of living expenses. I want to own 20 rental properties outright, and I want to be living off the rental income. Now, this is my objective. You can choose whatever objective you want, all right? But my point of this is that when you have an objective in mind at the very beginning, all right, you are going to be able to plan better in terms of your financial future, all right? This is where you want to be getting to. That's your goal insofar as your assets, because your finances by the time you're 70, and of course by the time you're 80, you're going to be comfortably living off of your rental income and easily paying off college bills from your rental income. College bills when you're 70, yes, because as we're going to see, you're going to have kids later, not early. Now when you're 80, you're going to be comfortably living off the rental income of those properties that you have accumulated. You're easily going to be paying your medical bills from that rental income. Because when you're 80, when you're in your 70s, when you're in your 80s, you are going to have huge medical bills. And who's going to pay for that? The government isn't going to pay for that. You are going to have to pay for it. So you have to be planning for that now. All right? Now, let's get back to fitness. Fitness is a key issue of life that you should always be keeping in mind. Now, in your 20s, your fitness doesn't really matter. But when you're hitting your 30s, that's when you should have already certain ideas in mind as to how to stay fit. Because see, you don't want to hit 60, 70, 80 with huge health issues. You want to be maintaining yourself as early as possible. So when you hit 30, you want to be running a marathon on the day you turn 30. Run a marathon. You want to be running 25 miles a week. Now, I'm not doing that at this time. I should. I'm going to get back to it. Well, when we get to my age bracket, I'll show you what I'm doing, basically. But my point is, when you turn 30, you want to be running a marathon. You want to be living a life where you're running 25 miles a week, and you're going to the gym 3 times a week to do weights, okay? you're not trying to be a bodybuilder here, okay? You're just trying to keep your body in shape. There's that old Latin saying, a sound mind in a sound body, okay? The more exercise you do, in terms of running and weights, you're gonna find that you're thinking more clearly. Booze, drugs, you know, a little pot, a little X on the weekends or whatever, that's all good and fine. It's not gonna hurt you, okay? What will hurt you is being overweight. What will hurt you is not taking care of your body insofar as doing regular exercises. So when you're 30, that's what you want to be doing. When you're 40, you want to be doing a little bit more of maintenance, because by 40 your body is starting to decay. I'll tell you, I was so shocked when I was around 39, 40. I tried to lift a table that I owned. Now, this is a table that was pretty heavy, and I'd always been able to lug it around, okay, awkwardly, because it was, you know, a large table and an awkward size. But all of a sudden, when I was 30, 39, 40, 41, I forget, around that area, I couldn't lift it. I'd always been able to lift it. But this time, because it was this huge wooden table, round one, and I'd been able to lift it up because the feet scratch the wood of the floor, and so it was important that I lift it up completely off the ground and move it over to wherever I wanted to. And I could usually do this, but all of a sudden I was around 40 and I couldn't. And I've noticed in the last decade that no matter how much exercise I do, weights and what have you, you know, my body is just not what it was 15 years ago, okay? Let alone 20, 25 years ago. Okay, so you have to keep in mind, once you hit 40, you're starting on maintenance of your body. Now, by that time, I would suggest you should have run at least 5 marathons during your 30s, right? You should be running about 15 miles per week, and you should be beginning maintenance in the physical aspect of regular checkups, always making sure that your diet is balanced, not doing anything foolish insofar as your body. You want to do some drugs? No problem, but do it moderately, sensibly, okay? Keep it for a weekend, kind of like maybe once every 2 week kind of thing if you're doing X. You know, you want to slow down in that regard. Now, insofar as when you hit 50, there you're definitely full-on maintenance. Now, you're going to the gym 4 to 5 times per week, and you're running maybe 10 miles a week rather. This is what I'm usually doing, okay? Right now, I've been a little bit lazy as of late because there are a lot of things going on in my life. But that is usually what I do. Right now, I can feel myself a little overweight and a little bit slow in the head. I know that once I get back into a rhythm, right now I'm going about twice a week to the gym, and I'm not running 10 miles a week. I'm running, you know, I'm barely 5, okay, when I can get around to it, okay? But that's what you should be doing when you're 50. When you're 60, a further regime. It doesn't really matter how much it is. You should be just thinking to yourself that this is what you want to be doing. You want to be doing maintenance, okay? Keeping up your body so that it doesn't fall apart on you, okay? Now, let's talk about relationships. Now, relationships, they're always fun, you know. What do you want to be doing in your 20s, when you're 20 and that decade after? Well, during that decade, you want to be casually dating. Casually dating means casually dating, nothing serious. You want to be number closing on maybe 5 girls a week, okay? And you want to be sleeping with a new girl, you know, 1 new girl a week. That's a pretty good average when you're during your 20s. And most important of all, you want to be learning to maintain a rotation. Now, what is a rotation? A rotation is a group of girls that you see regularly. And you, of course, you sleep with them regularly, right? New girl comes in, old girl goes out, it doesn't matter. You always want to be maintaining a rotation. When you're 20 something, okay, you're not, sometimes you're going to have 5 girls at the same time, sometimes 1 girl, okay? But you always want to have options. See, a man with options is a man who is not desperate. You always want to avoid desperation. See, because the guy who has the 1 girlfriend and no other options, he's fucked. You know, that girl owns him. You never want to be in that position. You always want to have a girlfriend, if you want to have a girlfriend, you know, 2, 3 other girls at least, that you can call up and have a good time with. Yeah? You do not want to depend on one woman, because that one woman will own you, and your life will become her life. You will become an accessory to her life. You will be an appendage to her, like a remora fish. Look up remora fish if you don't know what it is. So you always want to be having more than one woman in your life, and that's why during your 20s you're going to have to be learning to maintain a rotation. Now, when you hit 30, and that period of your, from 30 to 39, that's your apprenticeship insofar as relationships, that's completed. You have enough mileage, as it were, to know what's what. You want to be dating somebody semi-seriously when you're 30, it's not going to hurt. Yeah. And you want at least 2 other girls in your rotation. Okay. So that would mean like the steady girlfriend and 2 other girls on the side. And that's what you want to be doing at that age. Right? Now, when you hit 40, okay, notice that you're still not married. When you hit 40, that's when you have 2 serious relationships behind you. All right? And you're looking to get married. You're looking to get married and to have kids. Now, why have kids in your 40s? Why get married in your 40s? Because there is no greater satisfaction than having children, your own children, not somebody else's children. Somebody else's children, that you're just a cuck. You want to have your own children, and you want to have them in your 40s, because when you are younger, you are not going to have the patience for them. You are going to be a shitty father. You're not going to have the patience for them, and you're not going to value them as much. Now, I've seen that in my own experience. I got married late in life. I thought I was going to be an eternal bachelor. But all of a sudden, when I was around 42 or so, it was like this bug. Like, I really wanted to have kids. And I tried out different girls and finally settled on my wife. And my wife and I now have 2 children. When I was 44, on my 44th birthday, I was single and footloose and fancy-free. 5 years later, I'm married with 2 toddlers, and more likely than not, we'll have another couple of kids in the future. I've seen guys who got married in their 20s. They were lousy fathers. Maybe you had a father who was young, and he was a lousy father to you. So you know how it is, yeah? Guys who get married in their 20s and have kids when they're 20s, it never works out. Now, of course, you want your wife to be in her 20s, and we're going to get to that right away, but you do not want to be a 20-something father. You want your wife to be a 20-something mother, but you want to be a 40-something father, because you're just going to have, you're going to be better prepared for it. Yeah? You're going to be much more patient. And also, by the time you're in your 40s, you're not going to be so anxious about a lot of very important aspects of your life. You will have had the time to devote more energy to your career, to your finances, to accumulating assets. You will have a better sense of your life. So, going here to family life, when you're 20s, your 30s, your 40s, you don't have a family. No family at this time when you're 20, not when you're 30, and not when you're 40. When you turn 40, that's when you start thinking about having a family. Now, the relationship you have when you turn 50, where you should be married to somebody at least 20 years younger. And you should have 2 other girls in your rotation. Now, of course, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's immoral when you get married, it's for life, blah, blah, blah. The fact of the matter is, marriage is a very tense situation, even in the best of times, because you are stuck with each other and you are working together to raise the kids. Because that's the other thing, see? When you're 50, you want to have 2 toddlers. That's my example, and you could say, oh, well, the coach is saying exactly what he is doing, and self-justifying his own life. You could say that maybe it's true. But in my own experience, I have seen it, that an older guy married to a younger woman, things just flow better. The guy has more patience. The guy also knows how to handle long-term his wife. A 20-something wife has the energy to deal with small children, just as a 40-something-year-old father has the patience and the wisdom to handle both the wife and the toddlers. Because I'm going to tell you right now, see, when you get married, your wife is basically another child. And the most effective way for dealing with a wife is to treat her as a child, to pamper her, to scold her when need be, to basically treat her as a child. And it sounds, you know, and this is something I would have believed when I was in my 20s. In my 20s, I was all like, oh, you have to, you know, find your best friend in your wife, and you have to find the woman that makes you happy and all the rest of it. Bullshit. Bullshit. Yeah. See, what happens is, see, a good mother, a good wife, a good friend, a good lover, it's impossible to find that one person who satisfies all those conditions or all those requirements. So you have to prioritize. When you're at 40 and you want to have children, what do you want? You want to have a good mother. You want a woman who will be a good mother and look after the kids and put their interests ahead of her own. I found a woman who is a great mother. She is terrible in other regards. For instance, she is a terrible housekeeper. Just awful. So what? You know, housekeeping, I can hire a maid. See, being a good mother, you can't hire a good mother. Either the woman you're with is a good mother or she's not. Okay? And no nanny, and nobody can replace a good mother. So, your priority when you have kids, get a woman who's going to be a good mother. You want to fuck around? Find somebody else. There are lots of girls that you can fuck around with. And by the way, the only guy who gets caught is the guy who wants to get caught. Don't be that guy. You know, keep your mouth shut and your shit in order, and you know, everybody will be happy. Okay, so think of it in those terms. Now, insofar as your family life, you want to have at least 2 kids, and frankly, 3, 4, maybe even 5. Because think of it in these terms. Have you ever heard of a man on his deathbed saying, I wish I hadn't had as many children as I did? Have you ever heard of a man saying, as he stares at death, I regret having had this family around me who is helping me here at the end of my life? You have never heard such a man. You have heard of men saying, I wish I hadn't spent so much time at the office. Yeah, because the office, your career, it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's trivial in the shape of your life. There are other things that are much more important, and your family is it. You might not realize this now. You're 20-something, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, my friends are more important, or my career is more important, or getting into graduate school, or getting a really good job. You might think that that's the most important thing of your life. It's not. It's not at all. The most important thing in your life will be your family. The most important thing that you can do is to be a good father to your family. So you have to be at an age and at a disposition where you will be a good father. Now, if it turns out that you're 35 and you have all the patience in the world and you can deal with a screaming toddler in the middle of a supermarket or whatever, then have kids then. I mean, if you feel that you're emotionally prepared and ready, and you feel that your career is at a place that you're going to be earning good money and everything is hunky-dory and no problems, go ahead and have a kid then. In my own case then, when I was in my mid-40s, that was when I was ready to have children. That's when I had the patience for it. And I found a woman who wanted to have children, and here we are. Now, after relationships, after your family life, what is the most important thing in your life? Career? No. Finances? It's secondary. What's most important are the assets that you have accumulated, because the assets that you have are going to provide for you and your family. Okay? Your income the money that you get from your job, the money that you get from your work, whatever it is, maybe you own some company that generates an income, whatever your income comes from, it doesn't matter. What's more important are the assets that you accumulate. Now, when you're in your 20s, you're really not accumulating any assets, as it were. But what you want to be aiming for, the overriding issue that you want to be doing is that by the time you are 30, you want to be free and clear of personal and student debt. That is your overriding priority. Nothing else matters, okay? By the time you are 30, that's where you want to be. Now, you're in college now, and maybe you're taking on a lot of student debt, and maybe you have credit card debt. Credit card debt that you had to go into because of whatever reason. I don't care. I'm sure it was justifiable at the time. Your goal is that by the time you are 30, you have no debt of any sort whatsoever. It would be nice if you had saved by that time the cash savings equal to a year of living expenses. Okay, that would be nice, because here's the finances part. During your 30s, what you want to be doing is saving 25% of your net income every month. During your 20s, you're working as an apprentice in whatever job, and we're going to get to that in just a minute when we get to the career issue. Now, whatever job you have in your 20s, you want to be saving a quarter of that salary, of the net salary. Now, there are various reasons for it, but first of all, before you say that you can't because you have car payments, you have rent, you have student loans, blah, 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 I got no sympathy. I remember when I was in my 20s, and when I was earning some good money at the time. Now, I recognize that even when I was at my lowest ebb insofar as income in that decade, I could still sock away a quarter of what I was earning. If I just moved to a not so nice apartment in a not so nice area, if I bought a used car instead of a new car, you can do it. If you can live on 100, then you can live on 75. It's as simple as that. You want to be doing it. Your priority, your number one goal is to save a quarter of your salary during your 20s. You're going to be saving more later on when your income is going to expand exponentially, because it does. When you're in your 40s and your 50s, and we're going to get to that in just a second, you are going to have a huge increase in your income. And it comes as if by magic. I've talked to a lot of my peers, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I'm making money like hand over fist. Okay, you will be making big money in your 40s and 50s, and you will be saving even more money, but you want to get into the habit as early as possible. Take your paycheck, whatever it is, and clip off a quarter of it and set it aside. Don't buy stocks, don't buy bonds, don't go gambling with it. Don't be foolish. Set it aside. Even if you're getting 0% interest on your money, it doesn't matter. It's there. It's something that you're saving, and you're saving every month. During your 20s, you're going to be saving a quarter of your salary, and you're going to be kicking it into paying off your debt. Maybe by the time you're 30, you don't have cash savings of a year of living expenses. It would be nice if you did. It would be nice, because that way, if you lose your job, if you lose your source of income, you have a year where you can find something else. Okay, but that's not so important. The important thing is that by the time you're 30, you want to be free and clear of personal debts. Then, by the time you are 40, this is what you want to be doing. You want to be owning your own apartment outright, no matter how shitty the apartment. Okay, you want to be owning your own place. Okay, don't worry about how big it is. Don't worry about the square feet or the area. Just your own place, and own it in a state where the property taxes aren't so high. That's an important key issue. I was talking to Mish Shedlock one time, and he was talking about properties in Illinois, and he was saying essentially that the property taxes are so high in Illinois that essentially you couldn't own a property. It was too expensive to own a property. It was better to rent. Okay. Now, aside from that, you want to be owning your own apartment. You also want to have saved in cash 5 years worth of living expenses. Now, if you've been saving money, 25% of your net income during your 30s, you're going to have this. You're easily going to be able to have it. But by the time you're 40, you're going to be saving a third of your net income. And you're going to be reinvesting 100% of rental income into paying off the rental income mortgages, because that's the other thing you're going to have. When you are 40, you are going to own 3 properties, okay? 3 rental properties with mortgages that are going to be paying themselves off. Now, these rental properties, they can be studio apartments, they can be, you know, a small house. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a small store, maybe. Whatever it is, you want to be accumulating properties, because stocks, bonds, you know, companies go bankrupt. Real estate, they are not making more of the stuff. They are not making more land. Land is the only thing that is always valuable. So you want to be owning land. You want to be accumulating rental properties, because when you hit 80, 70, when you're an old man, you want to be living off of your rental properties. So when you're 40, you want to own 3 rental properties with mortgage. That's fine, you know, but making sure that they are paying for themselves. On top of you saving 33% of your income when you're 40. So what's going to happen? On the one hand, you're going to have these rental properties that are paying for themselves. Maybe you have to chip in a little bit. You chip in a little bit. That's fine. On the other hand, you're going to be saving a buttload of money, okay, in cash, 33% of your net income. By the time you're 40, you're going to be doing very well. Now, when you're 50, well, before moving on insofar as assets and so forth, let's move on to your career. Your career. Now, your career, when you're 20 and the decade after that, you're trying different career paths. You're beginning your apprenticeship in your chosen path. You're figuring out if you're an insider or an outsider. Now, this is very important. The distinction between an insider and an outsider. My brother-in-law is a corporate executive. He's 42 years old, and he is an exceptionally capable individual. MBA, top of his class, you know, brand name school. I mean, he is going to climb to the top of the corporate ladder. Now, the thing is, when he was young, he really wanted to be an entrepreneur because his grandfather was an entrepreneur. And he wanted to follow in his grandfather's footsteps. His grandfather had been an immigrant, had come with nothing, and had ended his life as a rich man. And my brother-in-law wanted to emulate him because he respected and admired that effort and that gumption. And what happened was that he was working at a job, and he tried to set up a business, a store, I think. I forget what it was. But the long and short of it was, he discovered that he wasn't an entrepreneur. He was an inside man. He knew how to work a corporate job and how to succeed at a corporate job and how to climb a corporate job. And he wanted to be an entrepreneur, but it was the idea of it. And he realized that temperamentally he was not suited for it. So he closed up that shop he was doing. It didn't cost him anything, you know, just a couple of years of work, but, you know, nothing bad happened. And he put his nose to the grindstone and just climbed, you know, incredibly at his corporate job. He's doing extremely well. Like I say, he's 42. He's got tons more ahead of him. I would not be surprised if he winds up being the CEO of a major company. But you see, he was mature enough to recognize that he was not an entrepreneur. Everybody is telling you, oh, you should be an entrepreneur, you should like strike out for yourself and blah, blah, blah. You have to look deep within you and realize, what kind of a man are you? Are you an insider or an outsider? Do you work best within a corporate structure, or do you work better on your own, outside, doing it by yourself? You see, there is nothing wrong with working inside a corporate environment. Just as there's nothing inherently admirable about being an entrepreneur, it seems cool. You know, and we have these stories of, you know, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Zuckerberg and whatever that were entrepreneurs. They dropped out of college and they, you know, became billionaires. Yes, they did. Those are 3 guys out of how many thousands, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of guys who did the exact same thing and failed. It's like a lottery. I mean, it's like winning the lottery. You know, you don't bet it all that you go to the, the 7-Eleven down in the corner and buy a ticket, a lottery ticket, and figure this is going to win and I'm going to be set for life with this ticket. You don't do that. It would be insane, right? What you have to decide seriously, hand to heart, is if you want to be on your own or you want to be part of a corporate experience, a corporate environment. I recognized in my case that I would be profoundly unhappy in a corporate life. I would not survive. I would be chewed up and spit out, and that would be that, because of my temperament, because of the accidents of my upbringing and my inherent temperament. I just cannot work in a corporate environment. And this has caused a lot of problems for me. Being independent, being an outsider, it's very difficult. And I look at my brother-in-law and I envy him. And just as I know that he envies me, but we both recognize who we are. I would never survive in a corporate environment. He would never survive on his own. It's just not in our respective natures. So you have to be mature enough to figure out who you are, what you are. Are you an insider or an outsider? Okay? Now, once you've decided that, which is something that you should figure out in your 20s, then you try different career paths and you find the one that you really enjoy and you begin your apprenticeship in that chosen path. Because by the time you're 30, your apprenticeship will have ended and you're going to be in the first position of real leadership in your field, whatsoever that field may be. Now, you're going to be building your career starting at age 30. That's when you really are career building. Now, what does that mean? It means two things. It means honing your skills, and it means building your reputation, your network of contacts. The people who know you in your industry and say, yes, John Smith, he's a great guy. I know him. Guys who will take your call. Guys that you can call up and say, I'm looking for a new job, I'm looking for a new gig, The guys in your industry. That's what you want to be doing during your 30s. And you're going to take advantage of that fact because in your 40s, once you hit 40 and the decade of your 40, by the time you're in your 40, you should be in the C-suite, or you should be owning your own business with 10 million in sales. That should be your objective by the time you hit 40. Okay? Be in the C-suite of that corporate environment that you're climbing, or own a business with 10 million in sales per year. Now, secondarily, but in a sense just as important, you want to be indispensable to your industry or to your field. Indispensable, what do I mean? I mean, you are like in the environment of your field. You're like a satellite. You're like a planet in the solar system of your business. They know you. Everybody knows you. That's where you want to be at 40. You want to be one of the players of your industry, however large or small that industry may happen to be. All right? That's where you want to be at age 40. Okay. Now, at age 50, man, that's your salad days. That's going to be the peak of your career. Okay? Age 50 and forward. That's going to be the peak of your career, the peak of your earning potential. It's when you want to be an eminence in your field. Now, notice how I'm discussing your career here. I'm not saying a specific job. Okay, I'm just talking about the facets that you want to be ticking off when you reach certain age brackets. When you're 20 and you're in your 20s, you're figuring out who you are, and you are apprenticing in a field that interests you after trying various career paths. You never want to be locked into the first career that comes along. You want to be going to different career paths unless you're absolutely positively sure about one career path or another. But it's always best, if you're not sure, if you're thinking, try out different ones, you'll be surprised. Now, in your 30s, at 30, you've completed your apprenticeship. Your 30s, you're building your career. You're honing your skills, and you're building your reputation and your network of contacts within your industry. At 40, you're in the C-suite, in the leadership position of your field, or you own a business that has 10 million in sales. You are indispensable to your industry. They know you. You're a planet. You circulate in this solar system that is your industry. When you're 50, you are an eminence in your field. You are a name. Everybody knows you. Okay? Now, here comes the hard part. When you're 60, it's over. And believe me, you're going to fight it like crazy. Everybody does. But the way of the world is, Your career is over at 60. I don't care what the career is. Maybe, like if you're a doctor, you wind up being a professor at Harvard Medical or some shit like that, and you get called on big cases or stuff like that. But for the most part, most men, I'm talking the vast majority of men, they hit 60 and it is over for them insofar as their career. And it is very harsh and very difficult. Now, like I say, there are some men who are exceptional. Don't count on being that exceptional guy. You're in your 20s. I know, look, you're in high school and you're a fast runner. You're really fast. You're the fastest one in your high school. Then you went to college and you went to join up in the track and field club or whatever, or tryouts or whatever. And there were all these other kids that just left you in the dust. Sure, you were, hot shit in high school. But you get to college and it's not even that you're mediocre, you're at the bottom of the barrel, okay? That's what happens insofar as careers are concerned. You might be hot shit in your industry at 40, maybe even 50, but you get to 60 and the pyramid has narrowed. There are a lot fewer guys, and the guys who are up there, they are way capable, and a lot of them more capable than you. And you think that you're really smart and you're going to be able to handle it? Bullshit. These guys are going to leave you in the fucking dust. I've seen it. I've experienced it. And it's humiliating. But you have to face reality. That you're not invincible. You're not immortal. And you're not the best. There's always somebody better. And it's those guys who are better than you who are probably going to make it past 60. If you happen to be one of those guys, more power to you. Good on you. But don't bank on it. You have to be assuming that by the time you're 60, your career is over. Either you're being gently shown the door if you're in a corporate environment, or you're looking to sell your business because some competitor is eating you alive. That's how it's going to be when you hit 60 and in the decade following 60. And by the time you're 70, why even bother? I didn't even fill the box here because there's nothing to fill it in with. See, it's over for you when you hit 70. Believe me. Yes, once in a blue moon, there's some guy who's hanging around and he's 70. But does anybody pay attention to him? Does anybody, give a shit about what he has to say? No, they don't give a fuck, Unless he's like some billionaire and owns something, like Sumner Redstone, the owner of Viacom. But that was just embarrassing. Because also what happens, and what they don't tell you, you hit 60, you hit 70, and your faculties are not what they were. They just aren't. You're just not as sharp, not as clever, not as insightful. You hit 70, and you look like an old man. I knew this lawyer, great guy, smart as a whip, very insightful, very knowledgeable, very experienced. He was doing great in his 60s. And then all of a sudden, he hit 70. And he didn't make a to-do about it. It was like, no big deal. But all of a sudden, he started losing clients. He started freaking out. Like, what the hell is going on? And I would meet up with him, and I knew exactly what was happening, but I didn't have the heart to tell him. And what was happening was, he looked like a 70-year-old man. If I were a big corporation hiring an attorney, I would not hire him because he looked frail. And he kept up. I mean, he maintained himself. He did exercises, running, weights, the whole thing. But he looked frail. He looked like an old man. And he was bleeding clients. And he just couldn't understand it. Within 5 years, it was over for him. I mean, he had no clients. He was just taking on pro bono work. He was rich enough that he could take on pro bono work. But it was over for him. Okay? 70, your career is over. It's over at 60. If you manage to make it to 70, that's some kind of fucking miracle. But, don't even bother. So, this is the shape of your career. This is how it's going to be. In your 20s, you're going to be trying out different career paths and figuring it out, if you're an insider or an outsider. In your 30s, you will have completed your apprenticeship. You will have your first position of real leadership in your industry, and you're going to be building your career, honing your skills, building your rep, building your network of contacts. And when you're 40, your 40s, your 50s, that's the peak of it. And by the time you're 60, it's over. Plan on that. Anything after 60 is just a bonus. But by 60, you're done. So what do you want to accomplish by the time you're 60? Well, your finances. Look at your finances, the income you're getting. See, when you're 30, you want to be saving 25% of your net income. When you're 40, you want to be saving a third of your net income. And you want to be reinvesting 100% of your rental income into paying off the rental mortgages. Now, what do you want to have insofar as assets by the time you're 50? You want to own your own house outright. You want to have cash savings equal to 10 years of living expenses, easily achievable with the 33% net that you're going to be in saving. Easily achievable to have the cash savings of 10 years. You shouldn't have any problem there. You want to own 10 rental properties, 3 of them outright and 7 with mortgages, and they're paying for themselves. That is, the rent of the 7 that you got a mortgage on and the 3 that you own outright, the income, all that income ought to be paying off the 7 mortgages. Okay, and if you can, you should be considering cash that you have savings, any excedent, you throw it into the mortgages and pay them off right quick. Because by the time you are 60, you want to be owning your own house outright. You want to have cash savings equivalent to 20 years of living expenses. And that matters because you're going to burn through that cash when your kids go to high school, 3 or 4 kids in school, and then later college. But we'll get to that in just a second. Now, when you're 60, you want to own your own house. You want to have cash savings equal to 20 years of living expenses. You want to own 20 rental properties, 13 outright, 7 with mortgages, paying them off for themselves. Now, how does this work with so far as your earnings? When you're 50, this is the column of your 50s, right? When you're 50, that's your peak earning. At age 50, that's when you're going to be making the big bucks in whatever industry you happen to be in. Now, you ought to be saving at least 50% of your net income when you're 50. Because, look, it is so easy to blow through all of your earnings. Now, what did I tell you at the beginning? That when you're young, when you're in your 20s, you want to be saving a quarter of your net income, right? So that by the time you hit 50, you're in that habit of saving as much as possible. Because what happens in your 50s is that you get a lot of money. And the temptation is going to be huge for you to buy a Ferrari or a Lambo or a Bentley or a Rolls Royce or some other, car to show off to whom, I don't know. Okay, but there's going to be a huge temptation to do that. Don't do it. Okay, there's nothing to be gained by that kind of spending. It's just money that you're throwing away. Okay, don't throw it away. Save your money and use any excedent to pay off the rentals, right? Now, when you are 60, this is going to be the hard part, and this is something you have to understand. You will have 0 work income, and you will likely be unemployed and unemployable when you're 60. Because, like I said, you hit 60 and your career is more likely than not going to be over. You're not going to have any income when you're 60. So you already want to be positioned for that eventuality, because it is an eventuality. You're 20-something now, you can go out and get a job. I mean, shit, you can go out and wash dishes or mow lawn somewhere and you can get some income. You hit 60, you don't want to be greeting people at the Walmart now, do you? Do you want to be that guy? Obviously not, okay? But that's going to be happening if you haven't prepared. So, when you're 60, you're going to have 0 work income. So, what you want to be doing is that you want to be reinvesting 100% of rental income into paying off the rental mortgages. And you want to be living off the excedent of your rental properties. Now, if you own 13 properties outright, and you own your own home, remember, you're not paying for where you're living. You own 13 properties outright and 7 that you're paying that have mortgages. What'll happen is that, you're going to wind up basically living off of these 6 properties. Excuse me. You're going to be living off of these 13, the income of these 13 properties minus the money that you're chipping into these 7 to top them up or accelerate payment on the mortgages. You want to be accelerating the payment on the mortgages, of course. Because by this time in your family life, you have 3 or 4 or 5 kids, all of them in school, and you want to send them to private school, not to the shitty public school, unless you happen to live in a really good area, right? You want to be sending them to good schools, okay? You're going to have 3, 4, 5 kids at this stage of your life. Now, insofar as your relationship is concerned, by the time you are 60, you're still going to be married to your first wife. Why are you going to be married to your first wife? Because if you got married in your 40s, you are going to be wise enough and self-controlled enough to manage your relationship with your wife. See, you always want to be managing your relationship. You never want it to just sail along, because if a marriage sails along, it's going to wind up on the rocks every single time. Okay? A marriage is like sailing a boat. Okay? You don't have to be all precise about it, but you just can't let it go adrift. It goes adrift, and it's going to wind up on the shoals. Okay? So, insofar as being married, you're still going to be married to your first wife, and there's no reason why you should divorce your wife. Okay? Now, if she wants to divorce you, fine. But, you're going to be fucking prepared for that possibility. But that's for another podcast. You're going to have at least 2 other girls in your rotation when you're 60. Okay? Not steady girls necessarily, off and on kind of things, or constantly scrounging, but you're going to want to do that. Okay? Just to keep on the ball. Okay? When you're a little bit older, when you're 70, you're just not going to have the patience for it. You know that lawyer I was telling you about? The hotshot attorney with all the big clients, I knew him pretty well, and he was still fucking around at 65 and so forth. I mean, he hit 70. It all sort of like wound down insofar as fooling around with girls. And he told me why. He said, I just don't want the hassle anymore. And it's very true. I've noticed in my own case that you get older and you just don't want the hassle anymore. I mean, you prefer to stay home and, play with the kids or do some hobby or have some time for yourself or read a nice book than to be dealing with some chick. One time, I lied to my wife and said that I had to travel on a Thursday, when in fact I had to travel on a Friday. And that night, you know what I did? I didn't go out, chasing girls. I went to a nice hotel, and I got myself a nice dinner, and I read a bunch of books and watched some movies that I hadn't had the opportunity because of the kids. I didn't do anything, anything naughty, as it were, Because what happens is as you get older, you just don't have the patience to deal with girls anymore, okay? And by the way, you always want to be living by Hugh Hefner's rule, One time he met some girl, and this girl, she was like 22 or something. She said, I've never dated anybody older than 24. And Hugh Hefner said, neither have I. Classic. Okay. Hugh Hefner is sort of like a pathetic old man right now. I mean, it's just, he should have packed it in. But that's for another conversation. The truth of the matter is, see, you never want to be dealing with divorcees or the women who have a kid or anything like that. No. You want them single. You want them in their 20s, whatever age you happen to be in. And believe me, as you get older, your opportunities for hot women in their 20s increases almost exponentially. I have no idea why, but in the past 3 months, 4 months. In the past 4 months, 3 girls that I casually met called me up and invited me out to drinks. What the hell is that all about? I have no idea why. I'm assuming that, 20-something girls just dig older guys because we know more or less what we're doing. And you're going to have that self-confidence. You're going to have that sense of I know where I'm going. I know who I am. Here I am. What are you going to do for me today? And girls respond to that. So you're going to have plenty of opportunity for plenty of trim. And what's going to be happening is that you're just not going to be up for dealing with that trim. But anyway, in your family life, when you're 70, now you're going to have 2 kids in college, 1 or 2 or 3 finishing high school. Now you're going to need money by the time you're 70, a lot of money for this family. you will have accumulated that money, because by that time, you will own your own house outright. You will have cash savings equal to 30 years of living expenses, not including college expenses, of course. I'm talking about just regular living expenses. Most important of all, you will have accumulated 20 rental properties that you will own outright. Now, this is key. See, those 20 rental properties that you want to have by the time you're 70 that you own outright, it doesn't matter what the 20 are, or if they are 10 but twice as big as whatever, that's not the point. The point is you have accumulated a substantial portfolio of income producing real estate. That is the point. That is the point insofar as your finances are concerned. If you are doing that, if you have achieved that by the time you are 70, you're set. Your family is set. And that is what you want to be aiming for. That is your goal. Your career, as I've shown you, your career, it's going to be great in your 30s and 40s and your 50s, but all of a sudden, you hit 60 and it's going to be over. Just like that. Just over. And it's unfair, and it's this and that and the other, but you're going to realize that your career is not as important as your family. Providing for your family, giving them the education and the opportunities that either you have had rather, or maybe the opportunities and options that you didn't have and you want to give them. You're going to want to do that. And you will be able to do that if you are accumulating real estate assets as quickly as possible, from as young an age as possible, knowing that those 20 real estate assets will set you up for life, they will be everything for you, because there is nothing worse than counting pennies. There is nothing worse than wondering if you're going to be able to afford the grocery bill. There is nothing worse than looking at your kid in the eye and telling him, no, son, you can't go to Princeton because you can't afford it, so you're going to have to go to, Podunk University in Shittsville, Tennessee. Do you want to be that guy who looks into your son's eye and tells him that? I sure as shit don't. So, now, what are we talking about here? Oh, we got to the end, okay? Because that's the end, see? Your family life, when you hit 80, more likely than not, you got 3, 4, or 5 kids out in the world living their lives, and they're going to love you. They will love you very much if you've done right by them, yeah? If you're still with your wife, good on you. If you got divorced, it's because you didn't handle things right. Okay, because once you are 45 and your woman is 20 years younger, you don't have any excuse to lose her. If you lost her, it's because you weren't paying attention. Okay? Now, if all goes well, you did pay attention and you made sure that your woman is still with you, she's happy, you didn't humiliate her. But also something very important, see? In a marriage, in a life, there is no reason to humiliate your woman. Humiliate her in having her know what you're about or what you've been doing. No. You don't want to be doing that ever, okay? You always want to keep her in line, okay? And you always want to keep her happy. Of course, that saying, happy wife, happy life, yeah, it's true. Her happiness should never depend on your misery. Her happiness should never depend on your slavery. Her happiness should depend on your happiness. And you will be happy by planning out your life and seeing that plan through to the end. Now, we've gotten to the end here, to when you hit 80. So, let's talk about the end. See, one of the aphorisms I live by is, the secret to a long life is knowing when it's time to go. It's a very wise saying. And you should be thinking about it when you get older. Not now, but you should be thinking at this time, how you want to go out. See, there are some men who cling to life, even as their mind is gone and their body is a wreck. And there are other men who are very wise, who decide to go out on an ice floe. I always think of Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway was 61 when he shot himself in the head. He had recently won the Nobel Prize for Literature. He had, just before that, he had published The Old Man and the Sea, a wonderful, wonderful book. In many ways, the pinnacle of his career. He shot himself alone in his ranch in Idaho. And the rumor was that he had been suffering from dementia. Now, I've seen men who have suffered from dementia and didn't do anything about it. And their destiny was just so sad. They became bedridden men. You know, some of them didn't have the money to be taken care of, so they wound up basically charity cases. And it is just so incredibly sad. Yeah, once vibrant men who are reduced to nothing. And I know of one case in particular, a man that this happened to, and his family, he himself was well off, very well off. And so after he became incapacitated, his family was easily able to give him round-the-clock care. He had been a great man. He had started off not from a humble background, but not that well off, but he had built a lot, a whole portfolio of assets, he had built himself a life. He had wonderful children, a wonderful wife. He was a rich man when his mind went. He has spent, I don't know, 20 years bedridden. You know, he's a shell of a man. His mind is completely gone. He has round-the-clock care. And the horrible thing is that his children don't remember him when he was a strong, vibrant man. They remember him as he is now, a shell, a ghost, a nothing. And in a weird way, all of his achievements, which are really quite incredible, extraordinary, they're forgotten. They've been wiped away by the reality of who he is now, because he's been this decrepit shell of a man for so long that his children have forgotten him. Don't be that guy. You know, when you get to the end, have a plan. Always be planning. And that's the difference between men and animals. And I mean men, and also the difference between men and women and men and children. Because children and women cannot plan to save their lives. They go from second to second, from emotion to emotion. They are driven forward. They're so easy to drive forward. Yeah? They're like sheep. Men can plan. Men, and only men, males, we can plan. We can plan for the future. That's the whole basis of our success. That's why we're on top of the heap. Yeah? That's why feminists hate us, because we can plan. Plan your life. Know where you are going. In every aspect of your life, your fitness, your assets, your income, your career, your family life, your relationships, your friends. Your friends, that's the last thing I haven't mentioned, but I'm going to leave it at that. The important things with friends is you want to have a lot of them. The more the merrier. That's the bottom line. And as you get older, it's harder to keep up with friends. You lose them, inevitably. You lose them because they move away. You lose them because they have a family of their own and they become preoccupied with their family. You lose them for all sorts of reasons. And part of the reason that I'm doing this now is because my close friends, they're too busy for me now. It's sad, but it's true. My point is, plan your life. Plan where you are going. This outline, I'm going to do some screenshots here at the end so that you can see it really clear, the whole thing. But my point is, plan your life so that it has direction. Plan it now when you can. Because like I said, the days are long, but the decades are short.